This is the best to worst bosses from Kirby's Forgotten Land. I don't usually do lists like this, but I'm going to be trying to do more lists like this because I actually really enjoy doing these, and it's a fun little exercise for me to do. I'm not counting the mini bosses, so no Razor Edge or Wild Edge, I think his name is. I'm not counting any of the mini bosses. So if you don't see them, that's why. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. Yeah, let's get on to the list. So, the worst boss in this game is the Tropical Woods, and I'll explain why. For starters, he's not actually part of the main villain group of this game called the Wild Beast Pack. They're basically gang members of animals, and that's cool. I actually like this idea. But the problem is, Tropical Woods is not actually part of this gang. He's just kind of a boss that's an environmental boss. And honestly, I'm okay with these, but it feels like it's filler and not really important to the story. And then there's his actual boss fight. So his boss fight's pretty easy, not gonna lie. His first phase is basically dropping food on you, which is pretty easily avoidable if you are far range. And if you're close range, it's a little more difficult, but the attack doesn't hurt you that much. In his second phase, he uses a gate to block off your far range attacks, and can do damage if you're hitting him close range. Except the gate doesn't really do that much damage, and he tries to block you off with his vines, but that also doesn't really help because you can float very easily. He also has a gust attack, but again, you can float, so this attack is pretty easily avoidable. All in all, this fight is really easy, really boring, and his design isn't that great, and he's not really connected to the story, so that's why he's this low. So the next boss in this list is the first King DD fight. And the reason why this is really low is because the fight's honestly kind of easy. Like, he has two guys helping him out, but it's really not that hard. And he feels really weak for this far into the game, especially after the last boss. And this is my first actual time playing a Kirby game, so when I fight King DDD, I want it to be a fight, and I didn't really feel that in this one. I thought his design was cool and his attacks were fine, but it just didn't really feel that important. That's why he's so low. Okay, so the next boss on here is actually Fecto Fargo. Gosh, his name is complicated, really hard to say. And the reason why he's this low is because his fight is generally pretty easy and pretty boring. I would honestly argue that this is part of the final fight with the final boss, and this is just a phase of it. But he has his own health bar, and you do get healed afterwards, so yeah. Generally, though, the design and the way you basically just have to run away from it really keeps it up above the other two, and since it does have a lot of story significance, it does get higher than the last two. But that's literally the only reason why this fight is basically just the first phase to the final boss. The next boss is the Gorilla Boss, and honestly, I gotta just say, he is a fantastic first boss. Got decent attacks, if you got close range, his arm attacks, great attacks. I also love his design, and you can honestly really tell what his role in this wild beast gang pack group is, and it's great. I honestly wish he was a character that showed up more, but I understand why he couldn't. But honestly, just excellent first impression boss, and that's why he's this high. So the next fight is Silly Dillo, and I'm not gonna just be flat out honest. The reason why he's not higher, like on the list is because of his design. His design's kind of dumb, and it's hinted that he's supposed to be the guy that's supposed to be finding the other half of the specimen, or was at least looking for the green little squishy guy, and was clearly responsible for making the cages. But besides that, I didn't really like his design, and I already felt like the gorilla filled the role of finding the green little guy, because they're clearly looking for him on that. But I feel like the reason why he's this high is because his fight is excellent. It is hard, it is rough, you really need to be on your toes. Eventually you can kind of figure him out, and he's not that hard, but you do need to learn his patterns and tells pretty well. And for that reason, he's this high. So the next boss is Clawrina. I have no idea how to say any of these names. But I actually really like her character and her design. Her presence is excellent, especially that she's in a circus and that she does the whole cape thing. I love that. Her attacks are pretty hard, and she was one of the first bosses to actually give me some real trouble. So I really appreciated that. And I also really like how she's a pretty interesting character. She's more stage-like. She has a relationship with the final boss. She's clearly the most clever, the smarter one out of the other members. And I really like that she seems like to kind of be the second hand of Liganol. Of course, I wish I could keep her up higher, but her fight is pretty simple after a while, so there's that. But she is honestly a fantastic boss. The next fight is Liganol, and the reason why I wish I could like him more, I really, really do. But you kind of just see him at the final stage, and that's all you kind of see of him. I do like his fight, though. His fight starts out with him basically sending 2 packs of enemies at you before even fighting you. He actually is just annoyed that you were even able to do that with this sigh. I love that. And then he just goes all out with you, sometimes just with his claw moves and all the other things. And then when he gets possessed, because later on you figure out that he gets possessed in the special realm or whatever, he just goes barreling at you, teeth clawing, laser beams, laser attacks. It's just great. His fight is excellent. I really wish he was a more prevalent figure before his fight. That would make him a lot higher, but his fight was pretty fun. Okay, for the third spot, it's the second King DDD fight. And I gotta say, this one was honestly a little easier than the first one. I went back to the first one and to the second one and found out that it was easier. But honestly, it's probably because I was, like, buffed up super much, so there's that. But I honestly do like this fight a lot more. Not only because it kind of tells you why King DDD was kind of not acting his normal self, but it also has one of the first fights that actually gives you a second true final phase, and I love that. I also love his first phase attacks because they were pretty hard at certain points, and his second phase attacks were also just really fun to fight. It was a little easier, I would say, but overall it was just kind of a chaotic, interesting fight that really built up the final boss. Gotta say, that was good work. The Meta Knight fight was a brawl. Like, I can't even say that this was a really story central thing, and it wasn't. But I gotta say, this fight was a teeth clincher. It made me really worried about losing and failing. This was like right after a really fun boss rush, so I really enjoyed it. I also love how Meta Knight has like a meteor move where he just sends a bunch of stones at you, and he has a lot of cool attacks where they're not like super hard to dodge, but you feel like a complete badass dodging them. And then he has his special move, which I felt so cool having that hit me because it was just such a powerful move, and I really felt like I was fighting a master swordsman. And while it's not like a super significant fight to the story, it still felt like such a teeth grinder, and I've always enjoyed those fights. I also just love sword to sword combat, and you really kind of feel that when you are using a sword against Meta Knight. He also gives you the Meta Knight skin, which is just amazing. So, yeah, I'm a little biased on him, but this is why he's so high. The final boss is freaking incredible. So, his first phase is actually pretty simple because he's kind of just mainly trying to hit you from afar. And those attacks are pretty easy to avoid, but they are still pretty hard to avoid at times. His move when he dive bomb you, that can sometimes come out of nowhere. His little spear attacks can be really troubling, especially if he dive bomb you while they're trying to hit you. And then when he goes into his second phase, man, do you feel scared because he sends meteors at you, and there's this really big meteor that he sends at you, and that's really hard to dodge. I've gotten hit by that so many times. This was one of the few times where I actually had, excuse me, where I actually had to get a health, where I had to keep some health, a health treat with me so I wouldn't die. But his attacks were also really hard to dodge, and you really felt like on the clutches of defeat. I also love how this boss was one of the few bosses to actually heal itself. Bosses that heal themselves can be kind of tricky because they kind of can be annoying, or they kind of can be really satisfying. But this boss like heals itself and gives you a certain amount of time to try to figure out what to do about it. And if you destroy the health that it would have gotten, it completely gets stunned and you get a bunch of time to wail on it, which I just feel is really cool. And it's also really terrifying because this boss can't die unless you absorb the little green guy back out of the creature. And that was really hard. I had to struggle with that. And you know, I was low on health when I fought it, so I was really nervous. But it was a really fun fight, and honestly, it deserves the #1 spot. It was such a good fight. Yeah. But, thank you for watching this video. This was, like, my first time doing an actual, ranking video. And, you know, I really enjoyed it. I really liked doing this. It was a fun little activity to do after this game. If you would like more, tell me. I'm thinking about doing a video ranking the upgraded bosses, but, you know, I'll see how well this video does. Anyways, give this a like. Check out Prosafia Gaming channel out. Thanks for his, videos. And yeah, thank you. Have a good day, and I hope you all have wonderful days today.